Do any of you hear me?
Good evening. My name is Sere, and I want to welcome you to the June 17, 2021 meeting of the Community Board 11's Executive Committee meeting. As I said, my name is Sere, and I am the chair of the committee. This meeting is called to order at 6:33 p.m. Okay. Tonight, we are joined by District Manager Angel Muscane. He's the staff liaison to our committee, as well as our Assistant District Manager, Carly Wine, and Marlene Pierre, our community associates. So we have a full house tonight. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, I want to observe a few ground rules with our committee members. Please be recognized. No one may speak until granted the floor. CB11 members, if you have a question about the board business or want to discuss something, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click on the participant icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty to the staff. And please, anyone who is attending our meetings, members should not engage in a back and forth discussion, and I will recognize the next person to speak. If for whatever reason I can't, then Angel Muscane as the staff liaison will. Okay, if the chat is being used, please do not use that for board business or questions about agenda items. Please make your question available by raising your hand through Zoom, because any remarks made through the chat are not really official. Okay, chats should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. Please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. And any members of the public who are listening to our meeting, welcome. If you have a question or comment about what we are discussing, please raise your hand through Zoom and we will wait to be recognized. With that, I thank you all for being here tonight. And with that, we're going to move to the roll call vote. Angel?
Jose Altamirano.
Present.
Adam Breha. Jessica Elliott.
Present.
Marissa Mack.
Present.
Judith Fabraro.
Present.
David Giordano.
Present.
Nelsa Arama.
Present.
Xavier Santiago.
Present.
Elsie Encarnacion. Jason Villanueva is excused. Nye Whitaker. And John Green.
Here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
So, thank you so much. So with that, we're going to move to the adoption of the agenda. So the agenda was distributed ahead of time by the board office and was posted online. And as we have been, following the practice that we have put in place for the past couple of meetings, if there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda stated. If there's any objection to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing Jose Altamirano, do you have an objection to adopting the agenda?
Oh, sorry, misunderstood that.
Okay. So now seeing no objection, the agenda is adopted. Xavier Santiago submitted the meeting minutes. And so we are going to move on to the adoption of the meeting minutes. If you have reviewed, has everyone reviewed the meeting minutes? Okay, I see that there's no hand saying they haven't been. So if there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes from that meeting. If there's anyone who has an issue with the adoption of the meeting minutes, please raise your hand now. Seeing no objection, then the meeting minutes were adopted. We will now move, let's see, the next agenda item is announcements. So I'll make the first one. The next executive committee meeting will be held on July 8th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. Are there any other informational updates? No informational updates. So with that, we will move on to presentations and discussions. If you look at your agenda, the first presentation is an informational presentation regarding the East Harlem El Barrio Community Land Trust. And it's with Athena Bernkoff, the project coordinator of the East Harlem El Barrio Land Trust. Athena, welcome.
Thank you. Is it possible? I'm going to start sharing my screen now, if that's okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Okay. Can everyone see the slide that says Phase 1 project update, CB11, 6/17/21? All right, great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me the floor tonight and giving me some time to present an update from the East Harlem El Barrio Community Land Trust. As Nelsa said, my name is Athena Bernkoff. My gender pronouns are they and them. I am the project coordinator of the East Harlem El Barrio CLT. And my intention tonight is to give an update on some of our activities since we have grown and expanded over the past few months, and want to make sure that the community board has some updates on what's been going on. So with that said, I'll jump right in. So wanted to give just a quick reminder about what a community land trust is. Some of the language that we use often is community land trusts are nonprofit organizations that treat land as a public good. The CLT will own the land and work to ensure that it's used in ways that benefit community. And then buildings on the land are owned and used by different community organizations, businesses, and individuals. This is the mission of the East Harlem El Barrio CLT. I'll read it out loud. The East Harlem El Barrio CLT works to develop and preserve community-controlled, truly and permanently affordable housing, commercial, green, and cultural spaces in East Harlem El Barrio that prioritizes households of extremely low to low incomes. And as a strategy to ensure permanent affordability, the East Harlem El Barrio CLT will own land and lease it to buildings on that land, as well as develop a resident-controlled mutual housing association. And I wanted to give a quick, super quick overview of what a mutual housing association is, so that is clear. It's a nonprofit, community-based organization that owns and manages housing, and it's intended to be permanently and deeply affordable and to support resident organizing on an ongoing basis. And the primary goal for East Harlem Barrio CLT for the mutual housing, partnering with the mutual housing association in our affordable housing development project is specifically the democratic governance structure of the mutual housing association, where the MHA, as it's often called, is governed by residents and some non-resident members to ensure that the MHA is accountable to the broader community and to gain access to professional expertise and political support. And so we'll hear some brief bullet points on some of the benefits and outcomes or intended outcomes of an MHA. And to be clear, no MHAs, not all MHAs are created with the same purpose or intention or mission, but these are some of the intentions that we apply in our vision and our practice for the projects that we're working on and our partnership with the East Harlem Barrio MHA, which is to take advantage of economies of scale to provide members access to services and professional assistance. And in this case, when we say members, we mean people who live in the buildings that are part of the MHA. We intend to build networks of mutual support between residents and to increase the amount of housing guaranteed to remain permanently affordable to low-income people. So this is a brief discussion, a brief overview of MHAs. Again, this is not it's not overly comprehensive. It doesn't apply to all MHAs, but this is how we frame our intention for the governance structure and ownership structure that we're working with. Excuse me. Okay, so I want to give some information about the particular properties that we're working with. As many of you may already know, last November of 2020, the East Harlem Barrio CLT and our kind of collaborative organization, a Housing Development Fund Corporation, which is the apologies. The CLT is the parent organization of the entity that owns the buildings. And we recently acquired these last November in 2020 and from city ownership. And so here we have the addresses and a little picture of each of the buildings in a not quite current state, but these indicate, these are images of the buildings prior to closing. And you'll see that they were in city ownership, all of them, but maybe in different programs within city ownership. So some were part of a program known as TIL, Tenant Interim Lease, such as 53 East 110th Street. Others were unprogrammed, which means that they were housed in some different division of HPD, HPD being the agency the city agency that owned these buildings. And you'll notice that 3 of the buildings are in East Harlem, but 1 of the buildings is in Central Harlem. And of the 36 units that currently exist across the 4 buildings, 14 of those are currently occupied. There are also 3 community and commercial spaces across the 4 buildings. One of those is partially occupied, although in the process of being vacated. So this is a real brief snapshot of the ownership transfer, the process for ownership transfer from the city to what is now both the MHA and the CLT. And so before we closed in November, we partnered with nonprofit developers, Banana Kelly Community Improvement Association, and Catch to plan the rehabilitation and finance structure of the buildings. Just noticing the chat and making sure that folks can still see my presentation. Still visible? Okay. Prior to closing, also, we created this entity, the Mutual Housing Association, which is specifically intended to own the buildings and will be managed and operated by Banana Kelly, who was also the developer for the project. We also secured construction loans and a mortgage from HPD and the Community Preservation Corporation for construction and long-term maintenance of the buildings. 4 of the buildings were in really bad shape and required a gut rehab. And so we partnered with Banana Kelly to establish the work scope for the rehabilitation, as well as to secure loans for the extensive expenses related to the rehabilitation. And then officially ownership was transferred from HPD to the CLT and the MHA on November 23rd of 2020. So currently we're in this middle period here, the rehab period, where construction has started on the 4 buildings. And we're doing the construction in 2 phases. I apologize, there's a typo there. The first phase is where we work on the 2 buildings of the project that are empty. There are no tenants who are currently living in them. And the intention is once the construction on those buildings are completed, tenants who live in the other 2 buildings that are currently occupied will be relocated to the newly rehabbed buildings while their permanent homes are being rehabbed as well. And so once the second phase is done, residents will be moved back to their buildings, which will have been newly rehabbed and construction. And again, Banana Kelly as developer is also manager and operator of the buildings while they're under construction. And so then we expect the construction process to take 2 years from when we closed back in November. Assuming that there are no major delays, although it has been a challenging process to be in during a pandemic. But so far we're moving forward and construction seems to be going smoothly. And here you see a third kind of phase of the project, which we call our second closing and transfer for what will be the permanent structure. So when rehab is completed, rents will shift in the apartments and a new rent order will be issued for the apartments in the buildings. Ownership of the buildings will officially transfer to the Mutual Housing Association. Currently, the CLT owns them while they're under construction, and will transfer that ownership to the MHA. And the reason for that is to separate ownership of land in the buildings to ensure that no single entity can flip the project, flip the buildings, try to make a profit off of it. There's different layers of oversight of both entities to prevent there being speculation, and that would contribute to the larger gentrification of the neighborhoods where these buildings are located. Additionally, the CLT will issue a 99-year ground lease to the Mutual Housing Association. And again, that's to further prevent speculation, provide long-term stability to the rents in the buildings. And finally, once construction is completed, residents will be elected to the majority of the seats on the MHA board. And I'll go deeper into the governance structure on the next slide. Should I pause for questions, or should I save questions until the end?
Athena, save the questions to the end.
Okay,
Because questions might be answered throughout your presentation.
good point. All right, thank you. All right. So if I can move to the next slide. So here we have going a little bit more into detail on the governance structure, and a little bit of this is repeat because we know that some of the details of this project can be a bit confusing. And so I want to give a little bit of a visualization to what we're talking about in the governance structure. So in the center, you see what we have is our intended permanent structure. So this will go into place once rehab is completed. But essentially the MHA, the Mutual Housing Association, owns the buildings, and the CLT, the Community Land Trust, owns the land. But that being said, the permanent structure doesn't go in place again until after construction is completed. During the rehabilitation process, the CLT owns both the land and the buildings. And the Mutual Housing Association, which is run by Banana Kelly and Catch, our partner developers, will control the buildings to ensure that there is full leadership from experienced developers during the construction process. That means that during this time, Banana Kelly is also managing the buildings in the project. And you'll see here, this is the current distribution of the board of director seats on the Mutual Housing Association. So 3 of the board seats are for Banana Kelly as developer and manager of the buildings. 1 seat is for Catch as another partner developer in the project. And then the final of the 5 seats on the current MHA board is for the East Frontera Barrio CLT as a community member and providing oversight over the project with community representation. Then once construction is completed, we will shift to ensuring that residents of the buildings themselves have a majority of the seats on the Mutual Housing Association Board of Directors. At that time, the CLT the ownership of the buildings will go officially to the Mutual Housing Association. The CLT will have issued a ground lease to the MHA and will have the first annual meeting of the permanent structure of the Mutual Housing Association, where tenants will fill 4 of the 6 Mutual Housing Association Board of Director seats. The Community Land Trust will retain 1 seat on the MHA board, and Banana Kelly and Catch as developers and manager will retain 2 seats, 1 each rather, on the MHA board. And again, the CLT will continue to own the land and ensure that it's community controlled. And this bottom right block gives an indication of our intention for the division of seats on the Community Land Trust Board of Directors. Oh, that's weird. Some of the slide didn't come through. There we go. So this gives a snapshot of how many units are involved in the project. We have 36 units currently, and after rehabilitation is completed, there will be 38 units. And all of the units in the project will be rent stabilized, which offers an added protection to tenants and ensure their long-term stability in the units. Our intention here is that people should be able to stay in their units, stay in the building long-term, ideally over generations even, so folks can really stay in place and in their communities. And so here on the right-hand side, you also see the breakdown of rents. That will be how the rents will be calculated as of when construction is completed. So the 14 units that are currently occupied will be set at 35% AMI. And that'll put those units around between $700 and $800. The 2 additional units that are created in the project will also be set at 35% AMI. And then the final 22 vacant units will be set at 100% AMI. And note that the reason why we had to do this distribution of rents was to ensure the long-term economic feasibility of the Mutual Housing Association, knowing that we will incur, the Mutual Housing Association has incurred a lot of debt to be able to rehab the buildings and bring them up to standard and up to code and ensure the good quality housing provided through the residential units, in addition to the commercial units, which I'll go into next. That being said, of these 22 units, 4 of those units are going to be set aside as homeless, as what is called homeless set-asides. And so that will be for people who are coming out of the city's homeless shelter. That said, in addition, we are also trying to work and organize to deepen the affordability of those 22 vacant units, or essentially the 18 vacant units, since 4 of those are from the set-asides. And we're doing that by looking to secure project-based Section 8 vouchers that will allow us to offset some of the costs to tenants who move into those 22 vacant units. Additionally, for those residents who currently live in the buildings, we have been HPD has committed to providing tenant-based Section 8 vouchers to all tenants who qualify to offset the increase in rent once the rehabilitation on the buildings is completed. So here you have an indication of the commercial and community spaces. Again, one of the commercial spaces is currently occupied, but in the process of being vacated, and the other 2 are vacant. These are anticipated rents that you see here, but that may change depending on how smoothly construction does, how smoothly construction goes. And we're able to keep the scope of work and the pro forma, or rather the underwriting that we've committed. And part of the intention for the commercial spaces was to offset some of the rent to the residential units as residential rents will increase due to the costs of the rehab being done. But that being said, we also wanted to keep the rents for the commercial and community spaces a little lower to make them accessible to people who live and run small businesses in the community. And one commitment that we've made as the CLT and steward of the land and participating in the stewardship of the Mutual Housing Association is to set the community spaces slightly lower than market rent in the neighborhood to allow for community-based institutions to access it. We've also decided to allow people who live in the MHA, residents who live in the MHA, a first chance to apply to submit business plans for the commercial space. So the intention is that we give opportunities from within the community, people who are living there, to have access to that space. And we also want to prioritize smaller businesses. But this is also, of course, within considerations of what's financially feasible for the Mutual Housing Association. And so next steps for the project include continuing to organize for Section 8 vouchers to deepen the affordability of the residential spaces. We're in the process of doing resident trainings with all of the tenants who currently live in the buildings to prepare them to step into leadership on the board of directors of the Mutual Housing Association when the board of elections, the elections of the board of directors of the MHA are had once construction is completed. And at the same time, the CLT, having completed this project that took a very long time, is in the process of reflecting on what was accomplished over the past few years that it took for this project to come to fruition and determine what our next steps might be and what capacity building or growth we may want to enter into. And that's my presentation. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Athena, for such a thorough presentation. I'm going to open it up for questions. Please, board members, if you have a question of Ms. Burnkoff, could you please raise your hand? Marissa?
Yes, hi, good evening. Thank you, Nilsa, for recognizing me, and thank you, Athena, for presenting on the land trust. So I have a few questions, I guess, in general, in regards to how the buildings are run. So in regards to, I guess, vetting the members of the building for a board appointment, how is that done? Because this is kind of like a business, more or less, right? In regards to maintaining and ensuring that the building is going to be successful. So it's not just based off of, I guess, how well you run a meeting. There also has to be like a financial aspect of it, and being responsible in that sense. So just wondering like what that process looks like for people that would be moving in or actually just joining the board. And then what is the second question is just like, what is the oversight? Is it just independent of the board members, or is there another layer that comes into play just to make sure that the building is sustainable? And only saying this because of a lot of things that are going on right now with some of the TIL buildings and HDFC buildings within the area, which are also self-run and self-managed in a lot of cases. So just wondering how that applies to community land trusts.
Thank you for those questions. So towards the first question in terms of the management and how residents will be elected to the board of directors, if I got that question right, am I paraphrasing correctly?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So first of all, the two developers and managers who have been working on the buildings will retain 2 board seats on the board of directors, even after the construction is done and the first annual meeting happens. And that's to ensure there is that development and management expertise that's retained within the MHA. We're also embarking on a long-term training process with the residents, with the reason for just that is that it's a lot of information. There's a lot of technical experience related, technical knowledge related to effectively managing buildings. And our intention is to not necessarily make each resident an expert on, let's say, a financial report for a building, but at least be able to read it, know how to assess the information that's being provided there, and make informed decisions based on those types of reports, as an example of one of the things that we are covering in the training that we're doing. In terms of the process of elections, since there are 4 buildings, each building will have the opportunity to elect one tenant from their building onto the board. And that's how the 4 seats, the 4 resident seats from the MHA are being filled. And so the building members elect themselves. That being said, there is oversight within the bylaws of the Mutual Housing Association that if it's determined that a board member is not fulfilling their role well, and that could include for reasons of not having the capacity to maintain the responsibilities of a board member, including being responsible for maintaining the financial wellness of the organization as you put out, which is a type of business for sure. Then the board has the option of removing that board member. And so there is that oversight there within the bylaws of ensuring that members of the board of directors are able to fulfill that responsibility. But that being said, the details of kind of the voting amongst the residents of the building and then the other board seats that are being filled by the developers, the managers, and then us, the CLT, I think we're still in the process of figuring out and are going to use this time, this rehab period time to flesh through some of those details. Did that answer the first question?
Yes, thank you very much. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then the second question, can you remind me what that was? I'm sorry.
Well, you kind of answered a part of that in there, but just in regards to like the oversight and like ensuring that the buildings were going to be
right.
Okay, because of a lot of things that are going on right now with TIL buildings and just making sure that people have the management skills that they need, for this. So.
Right. So another thing to mention is that in entering into this project, the CLT and the MHA both have entered into a regulatory agreement with HPD as another oversight organization for the properties. And part of the reason for that is both buildings, the properties being formerly city owned and using for the purpose of affordable housing development that is also being funded through city money. And so that's another level of oversight that's included there, where the city is responsible to make sure that we're using those properties and maintaining those properties for the purposes that we've said we are going to, which is for affordable housing. I hope that
Thank you.
answered
Mhm,
it.
it
For
did.
sure.
Thank you.
For the question.
Angel?
Thanks for the presentation, Athena. I'm sure you know the community board has been engaged in the CLT, the El Barrio CLT process from the beginning, meetings that were held in our office for quite a while. So it's, frankly, it's exciting to see how far it's come and just to see that it's in hand, right? Or just about in hand. Anyway, so a simple question. One, can you share a copy of this presentation with us, please? And then I think you touched on it, but I don't recall. What is the anticipated construction start date?
The start date, sorry, I don't have, I hear a lot of background noise. Is that coming from me?
Oh, no.
Can y'all hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, that was strange. I don't know the official date, but we started not long after our closing in November. So we've been in construction, I think, within the first 2 weeks of since closing we started.
And okay, then I'll revise my question. So then completion for that first phase is anticipated for?
Would be anticipated for November of 2020, assuming that it takes those full 2 years that we were told it would take for completing the construction.
November 22.
2022. I apologize if that's not what I said.
You could build backwards. That'd be amazing. You gotta let me know how you do that.
Oh, I said November 2020. Of course I did. 2022 for sure.
Okay,
definitely.
and then my last one is I was trying to go on a website for it, but it's not linking to anything. I'm curious to know, well, one, if you have a website up, and maybe I have the wrong address, but two, who comprises the current board of the land trust?
Sure. So we don't currently have a website. We're working on creating a new one. So apologies for that. In terms of our current board members, well, I'll say first, we have Nilsa Arama, who is representing the community board and also a community resident. We have another, say it again.
That's one strike.
Oh, really? Nilsa, I'm gonna let you handle that.
That's okay. That's okay, Athena. I know where he works.
Exactly. I know I don't need to get involved in that. Another community member, Rosa Custodio, she lives also in East Harlem. We have 2 members who represent kind of expertise from community-based institutions or related professional organizations. So that includes Linda Levy, who's the former executive director of the Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union, which also has a branch in East Harlem. And they have extensive experience lending to HDFCs, which the child, I guess, organization of the CLT is the official owner of the buildings and is of the land, excuse me, and is an HDFC. We have Valerio Orselli, who is a former director of Cooper Square, who brings his extensive experience with community land trusts. And then we have 2 members of Picture the Homeless, and that would be Deborah Dickerson and Andres Perez, who Picture the Homeless being the parent organization of the CLT, who really put in the flesh and bones and love and sweat and blood into bringing the CLT to life, and the vision for creating housing that was deeply accessible, especially to folks who have experienced or are experiencing homelessness. And that makes, and we have one person,
Julia.
Exactly, that's what I missed. Our secretary, Julia Durante Martinez, who is the former coordinator of the New York City Community Land Initiative, which is a coalition that the CLT is a part of. And she now works as a research officer at LISC.
Excellent, thank you. Would you be able to send that to us as well?
A list, sure.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Athena? I'm going to recognize a question from Beverly Cabot. Beverly?
Good evening, Madam Chair and Athena. Thank you very much for such a great presentation. My question is regarding the financing of the program. Can you give us some information about where the money exactly from, what agencies it's coming from, and how much has to be paid back, if any of them were grant money, and things like that? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for the question. So we have two major construction loans for the project. One comes from HPD, which is the majority of it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, is around $7 million. The total loans equal to about $13 million. $7 million come from a construction loan from HPD. That loan will turn into a mortgage for the CLT, and assuming that we meet all of the requirements of the regulatory agreement, which is a 40-year period, and we fulfill our responsibilities, that loan will essentially dissolve at the end of the regulatory agreement and will not require us to pay it back. That being said, the second loan is around $5 million, and that comes from the Community Preservation Corporation, which is does count as a private loan, and we do need to pay that back. And so that will that has been added into the overall finances and financial projections for the MHA, which is part of the reason why we had to increase some of the rent of the vacant units in the project to be able to ensure that we are able to pay that back in an effective way within the time period that we have it. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. I see no more. Oh, Marlene Pierre has a question. Marlene?
Hi.
Hi.
So I just wanted to, did you say in your presentation, thank you, Adrian, for asking her to send it again. Athena, I'm happy to see you.
Very nice to see you.
And I have had a back and forth. It's completely my fault. Very happy to see you, and you got the consent.
We made it. We made it.
I know. But did you say how many units would be set aside for the homeless population? Did you mention that?
Yes, and I apologize. I realized I should have visualized that better in the presentation itself. But so there are 22 units that are currently vacant, and those
22 units, yeah.
That are set at 100% AMI. 4 of those units are homeless set-asides. So that means that even though they are set at 100% AMI, the city will offset those costs in reserving those for people who are coming out of the city's homeless shelter system. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then my second question is, when the units are rehabbed, the rents will be adjusted, right? So current residents in the buildings will be moved to other apartments. That's what your slide said?
Temporarily while their buildings are being done. And that's why we're doing construction in 2 phases, so that so of the 4 buildings, 2 are occupied and 2 are vacant. We're starting with the vacant buildings first, so that once those are done, current residents can move into those 2 buildings. And then when their units are done. I'm so sorry, Beverly, we can hear you.
Can you mute? Okay, thank you.
No worries. Thank you. So once those initial 2 vacant buildings are done and they're rehabbed, residents will move into those 2 while their buildings are being done, and then they'll move back to their permanent units. And what we've done is issued all residents rent stabilized leases now, so that they recognize that even during the construction period and even during the temporary relocation, they're insured to be moved back to their permanent units.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I misunderstood that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Angel, is your hand still up? You have another question?
I have another, just clarifying on that last answer.
Sure.
So that they can return, is there any mechanism for them to remain in the temporary unit if they so chose?
That's something that's come up. I think there is some flexibility there, but it will of course be determined on capacity and what maybe accommodations may be needed. So the question is, will they be moved to a similar sized apartment or one that is like maybe slightly downsized, but better reflects the actual household composition of that family that's being moved? So our hope, I think, is to keep folks in their original units, but we have discussed that there may be some flexibility to keep folks in the newer other units if possible, as long as it doesn't represent moving, for example, from a small apartment to a bigger apartment that is different than what their household composition really requires.
Okay, thank you, Athena.
Thanks.
I'm sure that this is not the last time that the CLT will come and give a presentation to the board. And at that time, I'm sure that the board will have many more questions, but I want to thank you for the thoroughness of your presentation. As always, I'm in awe at the way you give information that can be quite dense. So I thank you for being here tonight. And with that, I hope that you get some rest, but please stay as part of the meeting. Feel free to stay on. We are going to move to the next agenda item, which is agenda item B, which is planning for conducting remote board elections in November 2021. We've set aside 20 minutes approximately for this, and there's going to be a presentation of a remote voting tool developed by Beta NYC by Zhisheng He from Beta NYC. So take it away.
Hello, let me share my screen. And Athena, that was wonderful. I'm an urban planning student, so I really enjoyed listening about CLTs. Also, the borough president's is really interested in CLTs all the time. Yeah, let's move on to remote voting tools. Hey all, my name's Z, I'm from Beta NYC. I'm the main tech person there, and Beta NYC is a nonprofit that works closely with the Manhattan Borough President's Office and community boards on technology and helping in building tools to use and create data. Thank you for inviting me to demo this tool. We've been working on this tool iteratively with other community boards based on their prototypes. And this tool has been used in Queens CB6 and CB7. In CB6, we have taught the members how to use it, and they have conducted it in, I think, 2 of their meetings. I think one of them was for a proposal, and another one was for their executive board. And then for CB7, I helped them administer it this February. So let's continue. So the advantage of the Airtable tool, as opposed to using Google Sheets, is that the Airtable tool provides much more better record keeping during the election. So you can mark folks that are voting by voice, and you can kind of ask them. It's just a reminder and good like record keeping. You can also mark people that left the meeting early or are absent, and then the most important thing is it will automatically tell you if a member double voted or a member that is present but did not vote. So you can call upon them and ask them, hey, do you have any issues? And if you have any issues, we can help you fill it out either by voice, or we can fill it out for you on the side. And then another thing is on the bottom image, you can see that the results are automatically tallied, so you can see all the results live if you want to, or if you don't, you can just switch it over to the screen and see it later on. So Airtable's all in all good, but it can be more complex than just using a Google Sheets and Google Form setup. So it just takes a while to wrap your head around the model. But once a template is set up, it just requires minimal training on how to add new candidates or check on stuff or resolve issues as they arise. So I think it can be a useful tool, and it can be a useful tool with adequate training, probably like an hour or 2, just showing you how to go through it. So for this presentation, I'm just going to go through a really brief example of how this kind of works on the board member side, filling it out, and then how that appears onto the database. And if you want to hear more from me, I can train board members on how to use it and also how to correct for issues if you choose to use this tool. So I was going to make this interactive, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to go through the slides and then I can go through what happens instead. So essentially, what members will get is just a link, and then this link will just be a poll submission here, where members will pick their name out from here. So I'm just going to pick my name. You can also search name if you can't find it. So put my name here, select it, and from there you can choose not abstain or not. Checking abstain will hide all the votes. I mean hide all the options to select candidates. But I'm going to choose to select candidates, so I can click add. So for the chair, I select candidate Apple. For vice chair, I select Oak, and then et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just going to go through each of these. And then from there, we ask the member to put their initials just to confirm that they're not filling for somebody else. There are options to put like PIN numbers if you choose to, but in our experience, there isn't, there shouldn't be like unnecessary like filling out for other people or those security issues. So I'm just gonna put my initials. I'm gonna hit submit, and that will live update the records on the Airtable. So you can see I have a record here. So yeah, these slides just goes over what I just did. So essentially, I filled out my name. I checked it. Well, I can't. Yeah, I filled out my name. I clicked onto my name, and then I can check abstain if I don't want to vote for anybody. If I do want to vote for somebody, I just go to their box, select their name for that position, and then continue on. Then put my initials. Then hit submit. And what that all culminates is into all these separate tables. So the most important table is probably just the main poll entries table, where you can see who submitted their ballots. Currently, right now, it hides which candidates they selected, but you can see their name, you can see their initials, and if they're abstained. Also, you can see that Miguel double filled, which is kind of important for the next one. So the next slide is the board members, and you can see that like you can see the main ballot column, and you can see that one person, Jose, is absent, so he couldn't fill out that that ballot. But then the next member is John, and following, you can see that they didn't fill that ballot. So this is Airtable. It's kind of useful to keep track again of which members did not fill ballots. And then again, Miguel here filled out 2 ballots. So you would either ask Miguel, hey, which ballot is valid, or just delete both of the ballots and ask Miguel to refill in the ballots because he filled in 2 ballots. I should have used just generic names. So if I'm calling your name, I'm sorry. And then the last section is the tallies. So for each of the candidates, there you can see the tallies for their choices. So if I go to each of these for the chair, you can see the active tallies for this. So candidate Apple and candidate Banana are tied. For first vice chair, Maple and Oak, Oak is currently winning, and et cetera, et cetera. We also set up runoff ballot entries just in case if there's a tie of any of the any of the candidates or positions. So you can really easily just spin up a new poll to ask for new votes. But that's essentially it. So yeah, Beta NYC can provide support for this tool at the day of your vote. But we can also, if you don't choose to use the vote, we can also provide support to help you improve your Google Sheets. We don't have a preference for a specific tool. We just want community boards to use technologies wonderfully. So that's it.
Thank you so much. I'm going to open it up for questions. Do we have any questions for Z? Oh, Z, I would like to ask a question.
Yep.
In terms of electing leadership for the board, I believe that every appointed member to any board should never abstain in terms of opining and selecting the new leader, or at least weighing in with their ideas of who should be running the board. Is abstaining something that is being encouraged? Because I know you mentioned it twice, like if they choose to abstain from voting. In terms of the leadership of community boards, no one should be really given that option to abstain. Everyone should make an informed decision based on the candidates, any presentations, any candidate nights that are given, or any informational sessions. So I was just wondering if that is an option that are being given board members. Because I personally frown upon it.
I can actually answer that one for Z. So we actually asked him to include that in the mock-up. So election votes, like any other board votes, like they all have the same rules that apply. So board members are required by I think it's OML or the charter to vote or to abstain. Yeah, so that's what it says. So that option has to be listed and has to be available to them, be it voting for a land use application or casting a vote for an election.
Okay, because I know that we've been very fortunate at CB11 where, as far as I remember, no one has really abstained. People have been absent from voting, but people haven't actually abstained from selecting a leader. So let's hope that that continues true. Thank you so much, Angel.
Sure.
Are there any questions for Z now that I asked my question?
Beverly
Okay,
Pavone
I'll
has a
open it
question.
up. Yes. Okay, Angel. Yes, please, if you could call her.
Mhm.
Thank you for letting me ask this question. I'm concerned about security, and I know you just said, Z, that they can put their initials. Is there any way for some type of like photograph of that person to be part of the identity of the person that's voting? And I'll wait for your answer. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. We can include an attachment field where the individual can take a photo of themselves. But yeah, like from my experience from working with CB6 and 7, it seems like most of the members are not worried about security because it's a board vote and it's really a serious deal if there's any fraud detected. So yeah, we can definitely add that field, but we haven't seen any of these security issues.
Okay, thank you.
The next hand is Jewel Jones, and then we'll go to Xavier Santiago.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, what is the number for declared winner? Is it the majority? Is it half plus one, 51%? And in terms of that runoff, if that's might happen, how does that work? Is it the same day when you're voting, or is it another day?
I can answer that one as well. So it's a majority of the members eligible, like with any other vote, it's a majority of the members eligible to vote. So if we had full attendance, we currently have 50 members, we would need 26. And if that is not attained, then let's say we had 3 candidates for a position, then you would automatically go to a second ballot, eliminating the candidate that had the least votes in the first round, and then you vote again. And then you keep doing that until a candidate achieves a majority.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. And then Xavier Santiago.
Real quick, thank you for the presentation. The elections committee, would they see the actual votes as is typical when we have an in-person vote? Will they have access to that? So therefore they could verify the information that was raised by Beverly and Jewel. Will this be accessible as you assist them through the process?
Yeah, they will have full access to the Airtable where they can see all the who voted for whom, and then also change, like if there's additional candidates, they can add additional candidates on the spot, and also create the runoff elections on the spot. So you don't have to wait a couple of minutes for that to
Okay.
pop up. You can automatically just do those elections.
And one follow-up question to that, have you run into any errors or mishaps as you rolled out this model?
It just took a bit of time for members that are technology like challenged to get used to the system. And for folks who just do not want to use the system, we would just have them verbally announce their vote, or have, or I think for CB6, what they did was they called the person privately so they can fill out the ballot for them on the side.
Okay. Okay, so in the case of, because that was a question that was raised last executive committee was, or not executive, I'm trying to recall, anyway, irrelevant. They wanted to know what happens when we have people who cannot be on the computer or have a smartphone. So you're saying in those instances, they called up the member. Was it one election committee member or was it the committee?
It was the district manager staff, so.
Okay, so the DM staff who, okay, all right, the new neutral party, quote unquote. Good. All right, thank you.
Okay. I don't see any more questions, but in terms of that last question, I will tell you that our district manager has been working on a method, a procedure for us to potentially adopt for our voting. And I'm not sure if telephone conversation or voting but via phone is part of that. It escapes me right now. So we will discuss further as the temporary bylaws amendment is adopted. And if adopted, then we will move forward with assessing what we've currently developed through our staff, who's been really very thorough in talking with other district managers and assessing what's out there and trying to put together a user-friendly method to potentially vote. Z, I thank you for bringing this in. And of course, Beta NYC always has such great product and always is developing things to help the CBs. So I really want to thank you so much for coming tonight and explaining and offering yourself should we decide not to use Airtable, that maybe you can assist us in other ways if needed. So thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, we value community boards. So yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Z.
I'm going on.
Sorry, could I just add one more thing?
Sure.
So before we move on to the next thing about the election and election tools. So as you know, mentioned last month, the idea was, the idea of tonight's presentation was to get, another option in front of you all for you all to consider, not with the intention of choosing anything tonight, but just to see what, different options there are, different, features that, to get you all thinking so that when the time comes that you want to make a decision on what tool you would use, should we need to vote remotely come the November election, that, you're prepared for that. In terms of, figuring out all of the, eventualities, like if someone needs to call by phone or any of that kind of thing, I think that we can certainly make recommendations as staff, and I'm happy to do that. But I think, we've always utilized the election committee or the nominating committee, whatever it had been called at that time, to be the, to create the election process, right, within the rules as laid out by the bylaws. So we're not seeking in the recommendation to limit the flexibility that an elections committee would have. I think that needs to be and should continue to be a collaborative process. We want to set them up as best as possible to kind of, anyway, kind of cheat a little bit, but, at the end of it, it's their, right, it's your process, right? Like y'all will decide on how that is, on how that's done, and the questions about, security and folks calling in and, flexibilities and how to deal with last minute kind of issues that may come up. I think it's things that need to be part of the planning process so that in anticipation of the election committee being brought together in September, certainly this body can give this thought and continue to give this thought. But then that body, can certainly kind of finish it off before the final decision is made as to how the election will be done in November, should we still have the ability to meet remotely.
Thank you, Angel.
Sure.
And again, thank you, Z, and thank you, Athena, for your presentations. And now I'm going to move on to letter C. Review of the proposed district needs and budget committee annual timeline and procedure and work plan for fiscal year 2023. I've asked Carly to please present. She sent an email earlier today. And so Carly, would you be able to inform us on number C, letter C?
Yes, number
Thank
C.
you.
Sure. Yeah. So I've pulled up the document here and we're going to move through it. Thank you first for having me here to present our proposal for an annual statement of district needs and budget process. I wanted to first provide you some context before moving through it. I had also included this context in the email that I had sent. So a few months ago, Angel had tasked me with drafting a proposal for the District Needs and Budget Committee that provides an overview of the city's budget process and establishes a standard procedure for the community board's involvement in that process. The procedure outlines the tasks for each month and the roles of the District Needs and Budget Committee, the office staff, and other board committees. Ultimately, the goal of this proposal is to formalize the process that we've already established and also fill in some gaps that we found to be missing. This document is intended to serve as a ready reference for current members and as a guiding document for future members. We don't want any questions, we don't want any guesswork involved in this process. So that is why we had put this together. So the first section of this document is intended to provide some context about the budget process and define some key terms and tasks that you'll see throughout the timeline. I'm not going to read through the first section in its entirety, but I would like to point out some of its key components. So first, and most importantly, the composition of the District Needs and Budget Committee. Each committee should have at least one representative on the District Needs and Budget Committee appointed by the board chair. We recommend that the vice chair of each committee serve on the District Needs and Budget Committee. Right now, as it's made up, not every committee has representation, and that's introduced some confusion. The submission process, so the second thing is the submission process for the upcoming fiscal year will begin in June, this month. Every June, the District Needs and Budget Committee and subsequently this committee, the Executive Committee, will need to review and approve a work plan for the upcoming fiscal year's budget process. This is to ensure that all involved parties are in agreement of their responsibilities at each step along the way. The District Needs and Budget Committee did approve the work plan for fiscal year 2023 at their last meeting on June 10th. And tonight now, so this is technically a review of the proposal, but also a review of the work plan that the committee approved. The third thing is that all public hearings on the budget will be held at the District Needs and Budget Committee rather than at the full board meeting. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, the proposal formalizes a more intensive community engagement strategy. In addition to the 2 charter mandated public hearings that I mentioned earlier, the board will now be required to collect public input for community district needs throughout the summer using an online survey. We trialed the survey last year and we received 77 responses. And this year we're starting earlier and are hoping to receive a lot more than that. Additionally, the District Needs and Budget Committee has the option to collect feedback in other ways, including through a town hall and through tabling at community events throughout the summer. And it's really important to note that support from board membership is key for this to be a success. So I know that was a lot of information, and I'm going to scroll through the first section. So I'm sorry if it makes you a little dizzy, but I did want to take some questions, and let me know if that's not how you want this to go. But I wanted to take some questions on this first section before moving on to the timeline, because that's also a lot of information and kind of separate. So if anyone has questions, please raise your hand and I'll be happy to take them.
Okay, I see that Xavier Santiago has a question.
Not so much a question. I just wanted to applaud you on all the work that was put into this document. We have, since the inception of the committee, always aimed our sights high, and I'm glad to see that we're taking another big leap forward in that process. And just want to say thank you. And to any of our chairs here from your committees, I hope you've been able to digest and really take it all in. So thank you, Carly. It's been a lot of hard work. Thank you, Angel, Marlene, everyone. This will make us a stronger board as we move forward with our budget process.
Thank you, Xavier. Are there any questions on what Carly has mentioned so far? Okay, so I have a question and I know the answer already, but just in case someone, so the committee will be the point where the community can come in and do their discussion and talk about any comments that they have on this. So just so that we understand, that work will be done at the district needs and budget committee, no longer, like you mentioned, at the full board where we open up a hearing for a potential length of time during our public session. That is correct, right?
Yes, so all the public hearings will be held at the district needs and budget committee. That's not to say that board members in other committees that aren't on the district needs and budget committee can or shouldn't be involved. They're also necessary to the success of this process. And as we move through the timeline, I will specify where the role of other committees is important. But thank you for your question, and I hope that answered it. And I hope,
yes.
Let me know if that introduced any confusion.
No. I just wanted everyone to understand that if you have a comment, the hearings will be at the district needs and budget committee. We would make sure that we market that so that everyone is aware, because it's obviously different than we've done in years past, but it will also allow for a more robust communication, in my opinion. So I just wanted to, just to make sure that everyone understood that. Okay, I don't think there's any more questions. Carly, you can move on.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the second section, as you see here, includes a month-by-month timeline, which I'm going to review in just a short moment. The timeline provides a foundation for the work plan to be submitted each year. It's also important to note, and I learned this from presenting this to the District Needs and Budget Committee last week, that the tasks that are involved each month are organized by the parties responsible, rather than in the order that they occur. So if that's a little confusing, I did create a spreadsheet that was shared with you all yesterday that is essentially this timeline, but in the order that it happens, and it's not separated in this way. So I did want to say that, and just keep that in mind as I move forward. So now I'm just going to move through month by month, and I'm going to ask that if you have any questions about any of the tasks involved in each month, if you write them down and save them for the end, and I'll be happy to take them then. So yeah. So June. So we're here now. The City Council has yet to adopt the budget for the upcoming fiscal year, but it will soon. And our process now is beginning for the following fiscal year, which in this case is fiscal year 2023. So in June, the staff, we'll start with the staff first always. The staff is responsible for scheduling our district budget consultations for late June through the end of July. We will do all of the admin work and invite the agency representatives and committee leadership. And we will also publish the public input survey and monitor the feedback that comes through. The District Needs and Budget Committee will prepare and review the work plan for the upcoming fiscal year and submit it to the Executive Committee for approval, which happened last week. And now we're here at the Executive Committee, and your task in June is to approve the work plan submitted by the District Needs and Budget Committee. And I just want to emphasize again, that's really important, because not only is the budget and not only is this work plan a product of the District Needs and Budget Committee, but it's really important that all of the committees are on board, because everybody plays a role. So that's why it's so important that it's reviewed here. In July and August, the Community Board is conducting our district budget consultations with city agencies. The public engagement strategy is ongoing and it will end in mid-August, approximately 2 weeks after the optional town hall, which the District Needs and Budget Committee has decided to follow through with this summer. The staff will coordinate the meeting logistics for our consultations and provide meeting summaries to board members. We'll prepare questions for the upcoming borough budget consultations. That happens later on in the process, but we are required to submit questions in the summer. We'll continue to monitor the public input survey results, as well as draft the statement of district needs. So the staff will be responsible for most of the writing. We'll also be responsible for the analysis of the data that's collected from the public input survey and other engagement strategies. The District Needs and Budget Committee will meet regularly during the summer months to recap the district budget consultations and the outreach efforts, and just make sure we are on track. It's optional to host a community district needs town hall in the last week of July, and the committee has opted to do that, so that will be happening. And both the district needs and all of the committees, including the District Needs and Budget Committee, will be expected to participate and provide support with engagement efforts. So, the committee had discussed attending events in the community throughout the summer, and that we're relying on board members to help support with that. In September, the community board hosts the charter mandated public hearing on community district needs. The feedback obtained in the public hearing, along with the public input from the summer's engagement activities, will inform the draft statement of district needs that the staff will primarily be responsible for. The city hosts the borough budget consultations, at which all community boards in each borough meet with agency representatives. As once again, the staff is coordinating the public hearing logistics, including the outreach to encourage community participation. That includes our newsletter, our social media, however else we're able to promote it. We'll continue to analyze the data collected from the public input survey and other engagement strategies. We'll submit the draft statement of district needs to the District Needs and Budget Committee for review. And we will work with the budget liaisons on the committee report backs and recommendations for budget requests. We'll also participate in the borough budget consultations. The District Needs and Budget Committee will summarize the results of the public engagement strategy at their meeting. We'll also, following that summary, the committee will host a public hearing on the community district needs. And the committee will review the preliminary draft statement of district needs and will provide feedback and input to staff. It is optional that committee leadership attends the borough budget consultations. And then the committees, all of the different committees, at their meetings, the budget liaisons will report on the findings from the survey and the accompanying recommendations for the budget requests, and will ask for feedback from the committee members. And then the executive committee will review the draft statement of district needs after the District Needs and Budget Committee reviews it. So I just wanted to note that September and October are the busiest months. As you recall, every year it's like we're crunching to get everything in on time. And for that reason, we feel that it would be best to separate the tasks, the statement of district needs and the accompanying budget request, so that in September, we are primarily focusing on the statement of district needs as a board. And in October, we're primarily focusing on the budget requests. And just to reiterate, at each committee meeting in September, budget liaisons, members of the budget committee, will present on the findings from the public input survey specific to the policy areas covered by each committee. And the committee is then expected to provide feedback, and that will all inform the district needs and budget committee's feedback for the statement of district needs. I just wanted to make that clear before we move on to October, where we're focusing on the budget requests. So the board finalizes the list of requests to be submitted to OMB by October 31st. The district needs and budget committee meets following all other committee meetings and before the full board meeting. In October, the staff will disseminate a spreadsheet of the annual budget requests to the board committees. This document will reflect responses to prior fiscal year's budget requests contained in the adopted budget and recommendations for new requests based on the public input. And at the end of the month, the staff will be responsible for submitting the final statement of district needs and budget requests after the board approves it using the form provided by the Department of City Planning. And the spreadsheet that is referenced is a spreadsheet that we've disseminated every year and that you've received previously. The District Needs and Budget Committee at their committee meeting in October will discuss the input from committees on budget requests and will also assist in prioritizing the budget requests based on need. The list of prioritized requests will be submitted to the executive committee. At the individual committee meetings, committees will review the budget requests and make recommendations for additions and removals. And the staff liaisons and budget liaisons will serve as a point of reference. Now, I have a note here that all of the guidance comes from the committee. So at this point, the spreadsheet that is provided to you will comprise of all pre-existing budget requests, and as I mentioned, the recommendations that the district needs and budget committee put together based on the public input, and that is the end. So once it reaches committee, anything further, any additions, any removals, all of that guidance will come from the committee. So it's important that the committee is engaged in this process. And then finally, the executive committee reviews and votes on the final budget request and priorities. And then it moves to full board, and then we submit it if it's approved. November and December are, nothing's happening with the budget. There is the November plan, but that is not part of the future fiscal year budget process. It's an update from the mayor on the current fiscal year. So in November, the November plan will be on the fiscal year 22 budget as we're working on fiscal year 23. So we do have the option that we give the district needs and budget committee the option to meet to discuss the update to the current budget, but it's not mandatory. Okay, in January, so January is when it picks up again. The mayor releases the preliminary budget in the middle of the month, sometimes at the end of the month. Community boards then have 30 days to review and comment on the preliminary budget. Every year it varies when it's released, but the staff will be responsible for disseminating all of the documents received from OMB to the board members, and we'll also share it on the board website. And then the district needs and budget committee will meet following the release of that document whether it's 7 days following the release or on the last Thursday in January, however it works out. And then at that meeting, they will review the preliminary budget documents before moving forward into February when we have to take action. In February, I'm just gonna scroll and then stop. I don't want to make anyone dizzy. The community board is required to host a public hearing, the second public hearing on the preliminary budget, and draft a statement in response by mid-February. Committees must decide whether they would like to testify at the city council hearings on the preliminary budget, which are held throughout March. So the main tasks of February are to review the preliminary budget, submit a statement in response, and decide whether the individual committees want to testify. The staff will once again be responsible for the writing. We'll draft the statement on the preliminary budget. The district needs and budget committee will provide support in drafting it. And following all of the other committee meetings, we'll review the committee discussion and also host a public hearing. The committees will be responsible for finalizing the list of requests that they want to respond to in the statement on the preliminary budget, and the committees will also reach consensus regarding providing public testimony at the city council hearings on the preliminary budget in March. And then the executive committee will vote to ratify the statement on the preliminary budget. In March, that's when the public hearings occur. The community board is encouraged but not required to provide testimony. Board committees may testify in relation to their respective agencies. The note, we kind of covered this, we did cover this in April when the separate committees testified at the city council hearings. The public testimony that restates the position of Community Board 11 may be submitted to and voted on by the appropriate committee. Public testimony that either expands upon or is not yet a position of CB11 must be submitted to and voted on by the full board. So committees are able to testify without having a vote by the full board if it's already a position of the community board. It doesn't need to go to a vote again unless it expands upon that position. So in March, the staff will be responsible for supporting committees in drafting testimony. The district needs and budget committee will support in testifying on the preliminary budget at the city council committee meetings. And the committees will sign off on any committee testimony and is subject to a committee vote. Moving on to April, the mayor releases the executive budget in mid-April. Usually it's the last week of April. Community boards have 30 days to review and comment on the executive budget. So April mirrors February, or actually it mirrors January. So once we're basically waiting for the executive budget to be released, and once it is, the staff will send it out to the board members and we'll share it on our website. And the district needs and budget committee will meet following the release of the executive budget, either a week following the release or on the last Thursday in April. Usually, like I said before, it is the last week that it's released. So we had to meet 2 days after the release this April. And then at that committee meeting, we'll review the executive budget documents and compare to the preliminary responses. In May, so May happens really quickly, like everything happens all at once. The city council hosts the public hearings on the executive budget throughout May. The community board is encouraged to provide testimony. Each committee may testify in relation to their respective agencies. Once again, there's this note about the public testimony, the rules regarding that. I said that already, so I won't say it again. This time, we're not required as a board to submit a response. Instead, the focus is on the public hearings. So the staff will support committees in drafting testimony if they choose to draft testimony. The district needs and budget committee, once again, will support and testify on the executive budget at city council committee meetings if they choose to. The committees will reach consensus regarding providing testimony at the city council hearings. And then the executive committee will vote on any testimony that expands upon previous positions taken by the board. And then the process begins again. So I know that was a lot of information, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Jessica Elliott?
Hi, apologies if I start breaking up. My internet's been really bad. Thank you so much, Carly and Angel and everyone who put all this work into this. I think it's really helpful and will be great moving forward for many decades, potentially. So I just wanted to ask, in the case that our vice chair or whoever the liaison for our committee is either can't attend the district needs committee or the committee that they're liaising for, is there a sort of backup plan for that? I'm just concerned that especially during busy months like September, if that information is not translated, that we won't be as successful. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So the staff feels that the vice chair should be the representative on the budget committee. Angel, can you help me out with this question?
Sure. So the expectation and, you know, with our recommendation is that that is going to be made clear and taken into consideration when deciding on, when the chair decides on who to appoint to chair and vice chair, that, you know, the vice chair understands that a responsibility of theirs, just like it is for committee chairs to serve on the executive committee, that is going to be their responsibility, or their obligation as, actually requirement as vice chairs to serve on the district needs and budget committee. If, let's say, someone is appointed the vice chair, someone understands that, has been attending, and let's say in a particular month can attend, can someone be sent in their place to fill in for an absence? I think that's fine. But I think still the assignment is what the assignment is. If they can't make it, then they should make that clear before accepting or asking to be considered for a vice chair position.
Thank you, Angel. And just shout out to John Green for being at every EOSP meeting for the budget liaison. Thank you so much.
Oh, John Green is awesome. And with me saying that, Xavier, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the question, and thank you, Jessica, for bringing this up, because when the bylaws were amended and this became a standing committee along with land use, the genesis in creating stronger chairs of each committee was that they understand the budget process. So in an ideal world, our chair should understand the budget process as well as understand the policy positions of the committees they represent and lead. And I think that was why it's a way of nurturing and guiding and creating that pipeline of leadership so that we have a more holistic representation within the committees and then within the elected leadership, so they understand what the challenges are as we go through our process as often is referred to as a quasi-city agency, as we represent the voice of the people. So I again, that is, and I think and I agree with Angel, is that if there's a one-off, I think that's okay. But the understanding is you sit on this and it'll be for a period of time before taking that next leap, and that makes you a stronger voice and leader on the board. Yeah, so, and I'll also echo, because we love John Green to death. as well. But anyway, that's it. Having been there from soup to nuts. So thank you. It's a brilliant question. Now you understand what's going, what happened, the decisions behind the amendment to our bylaws to add this committee.
And I just want to comment that, if it's a one-off, as been mentioned, I know the chairs are very busy and this might seem like another fill-in, but if a chair really wants to ensure that the voice of their committee or their representation, and if they are synergistic with their vice chair, it might be that the chair, if it's a Zoom meeting, may elect to, for that meeting, attend and take notes, or make sure that notes are available. We would make sure that notes are available for the vice chair. In that instance, if not, then from the very beginning, maybe that's a thought that we can think of in the place of the vice chair, if in case there's an absence, no more than a certain amount, who would be available? And so that's a very good question. And I think a one-off situation, as Angel covered and Xavier also brought out, it's not a problem. It only becomes a problem if it becomes habitual, which I don't think that that would be the circumstance. I see no more questions from the committee, so I will entertain one more question. And the committee, we're going to put a vote on this. So after I hear this question, as committee members, I really want you to think if you have any questions, because you will be voting on it. So Xavier, you raised your hand again?
Not a question. I'm ready to make a motion when the
Okay,
last
let me,
question is
there's one last question. I will allow it, and then this committee will move on to entertain a motion. So Xavier, hold that thought, okay? Okay, Jewel Jones.
Thank you for taking my question, and pardon my ignorance for this question I'm about to ask. This will be a newly formed committee of the board.
Carly, would you like to answer that? Well, I'll answer quick and then Carly can flesh it out. No, this is not a new committee. This committee has been in existence for several years, and as part of the city charter, it is one of the committees that is mentioned. So no, committee has been around for several years, and our district needs have always come from it. Carly, do you want to speak to anything else?
Oh, okay, that's fine. Because my real question is this: so you're basically streamlining the process, whereas in individual committees there was an agenda item where you would discuss district needs. So that's no longer going to take place, where committees will have that as an agenda item, and rather the district needs and budget committee will kind of be the go-to to flush out and discuss district needs and budget issues.
Yes, so I'm going to let
Okay.
Carly now, because Carly did that amazing presentation so that she can reiterate the process. Take it away, Ms. Carly.
Okay, yeah. So as Nilsa mentioned, one of the community board's primary responsibilities is to participate in the annual budget process. We have always participated in it, and a few years ago, the community board created a committee, the district needs and budget committee, where most of that work would fall. That's where most of the work would be done. That said, while this work is the primary focus of the district needs and budget committee, it's important that all committees participate in the process. And this proposal that you're seeing here basically formalizes a process that's already been happening and also expands upon it to, fill in, I said this earlier, fill in some gaps gaps that we identified as staff. So the purpose of this is not to remove responsibility in this process from committees. It's just this, like you mentioned, streamline the process and clarify everybody's role within the process, because, there has been confusion about which entity is responsible for what. And the hope is with this work plan that there isn't any more confusion, that each committee knows what they have to do at each month, what staff has to do each month. That's really all. But it's important that the full board, everybody, is engaged in this process.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
You're still on mute.
Oh, no, I just said thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Carly, also for bringing to my attention that I'm on mute. Do it all the time lately. So with that, I want to thank everyone for their questions. I don't see any more questions from the executive committee.
Oh, Nilsa, you're on mute again. I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I guess it's more of a statement. So the district needs and budget committee, they did not vote on the proposal. The goal is for this to be formalized for the community board and become the community board process for the budget process. But what the district needs and budget committee voted on was the approval of the work plan for fiscal year 2023. So I guess I'm not sure if you're entertaining, my question is whether you're entertaining a motion for fiscal year 2023 or beyond that. And
well, I will entertain a motion for the work plan for fiscal year 2023. And my question will also be, when is the district needs and budget committee going to talk about the rest of the presentation and the timeline, so that the executive committee can also weigh in, vote on it, and so that it can be presented to full board? Has that been a discussion?
So I can answer that. Like,
thank you.
The expectation is that, and I'm trying to encourage more and more, is that as it relates to board policies, like, and procedures specifically, that we put more of an emphasis on the executive committee, since all the chairs are in the room and the leadership is in the room, as it relates to, like, for example, licenses committee procedures, land use committee procedures, budget committee procedures. So the expectation is that whether you're, approving it this evening or approving it in July, because you're reconvening then, is that it be approved at executive, and then that formalizes it as the procedure for the board.
Just so I'm clear, we're talking about the annual timeline and procedure that Carly outlined in addition to the work plan for 2023.
I am speaking specifically to this procedure.
Okay.
And then this procedure calls for a work plan. The budget committee approved the work plan so it can get to work. And I'm speaking specifically to this procedure. You can do both, but I think that what I am suggesting is that the committee approve this. You can also do the other one, as far as I'm concerned, and that could be now or that could be later, but that whenever it is, that this is approved by this committee.
Would it be an issue if I entertain a motion for both, for instance, but in one motion? So for instance, I thought it was very clearly done. I have no issue voting on it. Let's say a motion for
that's fine. That's up to you.
Okay, so I'm gonna, as the chair, I'm going to call for a motion. Xavier had his hand up. So Xavier, you've heard what has been discussed, as all board members have on this executive committee. Would you still like to entertain a motion, to give us a motion? And if so, what is the motion? I'm not muted, am I?
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I know it's getting a bit late. Thank you, Joel, for your question. And just to clarify for date and a point of reference, this committee was added in January 17th of 2017. And that's when this committee was added. And in the, again, referring back to the vision of it was to have the vice chair sit on that committee, but it is, as many things with any organization, changing a culture takes some time. As for the motion, I'd like to adopt this this document and the other in support for both our budget process timeline. Again, thank you, Carly, and everyone involved in the process to making it a smoother and simpler budgetary pursuit. So
Does that motion, just so I'm clear, include the work plan for the fiscal year
yes,
2023?
I apologize. Yes, and the work plan. I apologize.
Okay, can you restate your motion then?
So both the work, it includes both the work plan and this current draft before us now.
Okay, so I'm going to state this motion and you tell me if I have it right. Xavier Santiago made a motion to adopt the proposed district needs and budget committee annual timeline and procedure and work plan for fiscal year 2023. Is that correct, Xavier?
Yes, both the annual statement of the district needs and budget process and the timeline for 2023. Correct.
Okay. Is there a second? Jessica Elliott?
Second by Jessica Elliott.
Okay. Would this committee like to have any further discussion on this document or need any clarifying points by Carly or any of the staff? Okay, I see none. So Angel, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Jose Altamirano. Adem Briha. Sorry. Adem Briha. Jessica Elliott.
Yes, I also saw Jose unmute and didn't hear anything.
He is muted.
Jose, can you state your vote?
Hear me when I said yes or no?
We didn't hear you, but you're saying yes? Okay, thank you.
Saying
Marissa
yes.
Mack,
Yes.
Judith Ferraro,
Yes.
David Giordano,
Yes, great work.
Nelsa Arama,
Yes.
Xavier Santiago,
Yes.
Nye Whitaker. Here. John Green,
Aye, great work, Carly.
motion passes.
Thank you so much. I echo what my fellow board members say. This has been an incredible piece of work. I need to thank Carly for her hard work on this and Angel's diligence in ensuring that, suggesting that Carly tackle this, and Carly as the liaison to the district needs and budget committee always goes way beyond. So I thank you. Just seeing all the pages on the screen shows you how thorough this document is. So again, I want to thank you, and I'm excited that this has passed. With that, we are going to move to item D. So it's a new board member onboarding, but as part of that, I also want Angel to also discuss the temporary bylaws amendments. So he will start with whichever topic he chooses. Thank you, Angel.
Sure. Where's my face on here? So yeah, so we got 12 new board members and we need to bring them on board. We've tried this a number of different ways over the years, had different levels of success. Last year, out of necessity and partly out of exhaustion, we did it via Zoom out of necessity and out of exhaustion with just the staff. Because we were, right at the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know what was going on. And we wanted to, in terms of the way we would operate, we wanted to provide the newly appointed members with, what we thought is a solid foundation of information right from the beginning in terms of what the board is, what it is that we do, how it is that we do it, what their role and responsibility is as a newly appointed member, what the role and responsibilities of the larger board are, how the board, relates to the rest of the city government, what our main responsibilities are. A number of things that, frankly, in the time working at the board, that I've heard, time and again from newer members, months after they've been appointed is that, oh, I didn't know this, oh, I didn't know that. And in fairness to them, no one ever sat them down and said, okay, this. They were provided documents, which is helpful, but, we thought that in addition to the documents, like speaking to them and be like, okay, look, this is what it is, don't be nervous, you can do this, you have a right to vote. That would at least get them, off to a good start. And then, they take the ball from there. We've also, prior to that, have tried different, approaches to onboarding and with different intentions, one more of a formal training kind of approach, others a kind of let's get to know you approach, some combinations, like meeting the members and doing a roundtable and all that kind of stuff, which is cool, but it requires buy-in and participation by staff, by members, by the newly appointed, and creating these processes, right? So last year we did that. We're going to do that again this year at a minimum. I wanted to just kind of put this on the agenda this evening. Someone needs to be muted.
No, sir.
On the agenda, this evening, just to clue you in that, we're going to be doing this, but also to see and, to gauge the interests of veteran board members and particularly leadership, committee leadership and board leadership as to like what their level of interest is in, doing some other kinds of things to bring the new members into the fold. A couple of weeks ago, the staff and I had a chat with a couple of the members that were appointed last year, just to kind of pick their brains as to what they thought worked last year, what what their experience was during their first year, and their first year was particularly unique because of the pandemic and all. But they shared some good things, like they want to meet the members. They thought that possibly setting up a buddy system would work. That's been talked about in the past, and we weren't able to pull it off. Providing or creating video trainings that can be referred back to, particularly on land use, because it can be a bit of an intimidating topic for folks that don't have that as a background. And I think those are interesting. They had some other good ideas. I think that the get to know you kind of thing is good, particularly as we're going to be going into the summer months where we're not meeting as much. Just to have that make that connection before the fall starts and have welcome people into the fold, makes them more comfortable. Having a quick chat from colleagues can be helpful. You all have been onboarded at different places. What the benefits can be. We certainly are going to do our thing, and I'm putting it out there for you all to think about, and any ideas are welcome. You can certainly do it without any involvement of the staff. That's great. Let's work for me. But if you want to throw the ideas at me and have and the staff for us to kind of organize them or compile the ideas and kind of come up with something, that's cool too. Elsie Encarnacion had reached, she isn't here tonight, but she had reached out months and months ago to offer a hand. So at next week's call with the new members, we're going to have the board chair and vice chair, and then Elsie also on to say a hello, share a couple of words, just to kind of share kind of a human face in between Angel droning on and on about policies and procedures. But then in addition to that, if you all thought of any other ideas, that's great. Not now, email me, but just wanted to kind of put that out there. If you thought the general idea was good, then please give us some feedback. And I say not now because it can go on for a while and I don't want to take up your time. Then, so that, and then the bylaws. So, over the last couple of months, we've been talking about, as was presented, and has been distributed out to the board membership. And thank you all that confirmed receipt. That's a very important part of the process. A proposed temporary amendment to CB11's bylaws that, if passed, would grant the board the ability to conduct its election of officers remotely. Currently, the bylaws, as you know, or I'll remind you anyway, require a ballot and require you to be there. It doesn't entertain any flexibility particularly. So we thought it was important to get that on the books and get that, give you that ability to do that. Should we still be in the state of emergency, and should the executive order that has allowed us to conduct board business remotely since the onset of the pandemic continue to be in effect? Now, a complication and something to consider for sure is that since this was proposed and put before you and started to be discussed with you, there's seemingly a push in our society, in our country, to reopen. And frankly, there's a lot of political pressure to reopen that many elected officials, and particularly the ones that hold the most sway above community boards, which are the mayor and the governor, are susceptible to. So there's announcements here and there, and there's ribbon cuttings, and there's much applause. But then there's figuring out logistics at the community board levels, like how we do that. So something to consider, should the governor say, okay, I'm not going to extend the suspension of the open meetings law any further, and not say anything else other than that, then we go right back to in-person meetings. Full stop. That's going to bring complications. Some are going to be okay with that. Some are not going to be okay with that. That includes, attendees, includes members, includes staff. It gets complicated. Includes spaces. I've begun to make phone calls to some of our community partners that have been kind enough in the past to, share their community meeting spaces with us, their auditoriums and the like. And, so far there's hesitancy. Like, they have rules in place that are limiting how many people can come into their places, much less offering it to, large assemblages of people. So there are logistical concerns that, need to be, weighed and planned around. We also need to figure out, should that be the case, how we would, convene, what people are comfortable with. And that's a conversation that this body needs to have to plan for whatever the eventuality is. My advice is that we not wait until it's thrust upon us to then have to, hustle and figure it out, because that can be problematic. It's possible that if it's thrust on us, we might have to cancel all the meetings, or we may not have anywhere to meet. Right. One other thing that I wanted to mention before going back to the bylaws bit is that there's been this term hybrid meetings bandied about since the onset of the pandemic and the suspension of open meetings law. It's been thrown about in every meeting that I've been to. There's been mention of hybrid meetings. No one has yet to define for me what a hybrid meeting is, how it would work, right? So we're left to, and by we, I mean all the district managers, because we're all similarly neurotic, because we're the ones that have to figure out the logistics, are similarly confused as to what does this mean. It could mean any of a number of things, but it depends who you ask, you're gonna get different definitions. And however it's defined, there are logistics that have to be considered and determined, right? Do we have to film it? Can we have a certain amount of people? Do we have to have it open to all the people? And it goes on and on and on and on, and it's less and less sleep for district managers. But that's fine, that's what we get paid for. But still, just putting it out there because it's what we are, weighing. Now back to the bylaws. They were, approved by this body to be distributed. They have been distributed. Board members have been confirming receipt of them. It is the schedule currently for the full board to vote to ratify that amendment at its next meeting on July 20th. We did put it out to all board members, from the point of the last executive meeting and subsequently since the distribution began, that if any members have questions, they can certainly submit them to us, to me, to the staff, to the leadership, or bring them to executive committee. To date, I have not received any inquiries. I imagine that's because it was all very clearly stated, or maybe people are being shy. I don't know, but I thought it was important to mention that we have not received any questions. I'm certainly happy to entertain any questions. Yeah, so that's that. And then after, I want to talk about the electronic ballot. Does
Okay,
anyone have
are
any
there-
questions? I see Marissa.
All
has a
right.
hand up.
Yeah, Marissa, would you ask your question, please?
Sure. So just a question in regards to what this possibly, or it sounds like will look like for September. So, and actually probably through the winter, we're more than likely still going to be virtual for our meetings. Is what it seems like based off of the responses or the lack of responses for spaces to meet and or the amount of comfort for some of the spaces that we were meeting in before. Does that sound correct?
I would say no. I don't know that we know anything with certainty. I think that if the governor were to not extend the executive order suspending the open meetings law, then we're right back to the original rule. And the original rule has certain requirements. Then it's a matter of us figuring out the logistics. And what to consider in, figuring out the logistics and planning is then people's level of comfort, availability of spaces. If spaces are not available to us and the governor's saying you have to meet in person, that's why I mentioned you might have to consider canceling meetings, because if you have nowhere to convene and you're required to convene in person, it's an issue.
Okay.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like I've been saying this since last spring in a number of my district manager reports, that even though the order, the executive order suspending the open meetings law has continued to be extended, they never made it easy. Like they would extend it on a month-by-month basis at the very last minute. And, at first, I kind of tripped over myself, and last July was, kind of all, losing additional hair, trying to figure out what it was. And then after that, I just gave up. I'm like, this guy's just gonna do it whenever he wants. So like, okay, let's just do the meetings. But the opposite could be the case come fall. Like what Marissa said, is what I was thinking. I'm like, oh, it's probably gonna be this. I'm like, but then, the last couple of days, the last week, it's press release. Up where I live, there's places I go regularly and people have been wearing masks all the time. And then the last 2 weeks, I'm walking into the same places and nothing. All the barriers, and I'm like, did a rule change and I missed it? Like as soon as folks got any whiff of you don't have to do it, in certain spaces, it went down. Like in my supermarket, you have to wear it. At the guitar store, you don't have to wear it. So I think that's probably going to be the case for us too, that the instructions are going to be last minute and they're going to be unclear.
I just would like to comment on a personal note. For instance, the city guidelines are different than the state guidelines. So right now, at my place of employment, we have to do questionnaires, we have to do temperature checks, we have to do the social distancing. Whereas in other places, because the governor has stated what he stated, people have relaxed the rules. In my job, we have to keep people 6 feet apart or no less than 3 feet apart. Whereas in other locations, the city is urging us to rent out space and to follow the state guidelines in certain instances. So there's no clarity. So I have to echo what Angel says. I am concerned that community boards may prematurely be asked to start convening. And what does that mean? Is there a likelihood where they would say that a certain number of board members have to convene in person as opposed to a whole body, as long as the board business can continue forward? I don't know. I don't know what, obviously what the plan is, but I will tell you that there's a lot of confusion and mixed messages, both on the state and the city level. And I will tell you personally that I think that because of variance and in the summer, the numbers go down, that it's important that we stay vigilant, because in the wintertime, there's a possibility there could be a resurgence. And then what does that mean for community board business? So this temporary bylaws amendment is extremely important for us to consider and potentially adopt, because we have to be able to carry on board business and elections. Extremely important.
One other thing that, that also needs to be considered before I take the other questions is like back to that concept of hybrid meetings, right? So like we've been kicking around ideas among the DMs and like, oh, what do you think it means? And some of the ideas are, oh, okay, well, you have to telecast your meetings, like have members in person, and that's telecast broadcast, and broadcast your meeting, stream it. But then it comes to like the question, like, do you have the ability to do that? Short answer for us is yes, to an extent. The extent being we have a camera, right? So if we were filming or videoing, it would be a fixed thing unless somebody's gonna stand there and go and start panning. We have it only in one place. We're not gonna be able to cover an entire audience and blah, 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 blah. Like, not to complain, but just to lay out things to be considered. And, over the last couple of years, there has been some council money channeled to community boards to promote them live streaming their meetings. That money never made it to this community board. Where other community boards ended up getting funds to pay for PBS, Channel 13, to come out and send a professional camera crew to do their stuff. And there was all kinds of flawless panning and going from the chair to a speaker in the crowd, et cetera. And it looks great, and I'm happy for them. That never happened for us. And while, I was investigating how we could do it, that was with previous year budgets where there was money. Subsequently, the community board budgets have been cut drastically for last fiscal year, well, the current fiscal year, which is wrapping up, and the upcoming fiscal year. So any wiggle room is no longer the case. So if, for example, that definition of hybrid was something that we had to do, we can't afford to do it. So like that's something else to consider. But the list is long. I wish that we could just snap a finger and do that. That'd be so cool. We just can't. Well, not yet. David had his hand up, and then Xavier.
Angel, first I want to say better to have and not need than to need and not have. So you're on the right track in planning, and again, working with kids, we always plan for the crisis that we don't want to happen, but be prepared for when it happens. So I really commend you, but I want to commend you really on all these processes that you've been implementing with both Carly and Marlene, and great job on, both of them in this whole year. And I think they're helping elevate, again, process, right? Procedures. I think mentoring is a great idea as well. So I just want to add that. And I want to be a piece of mentoring our young people that come onto the board. Awesome. But it's less questions. What can we do to help and really push this forward? And even advocating to get the equipment, because I think there are advantages to hybrid that we didn't know, where more people can attend that may not normally will attend, right? So I think we need to advocate on that level as well for the funding for that, because they are going to do the bewitch where they flick the switch, snap the fingers, and it's done. And I commend you. Really, thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. On behalf of the staff, thank you for thanking. But also, I think we need to, may to consider pursuing funding from whatever channels, maybe, charitable contributions or that kind of thing. That's certainly not my strength, but sure, I think still the definition of hybrid has to be determined so that then we can figure out what we're fundraising for and what it is that we have to pull off. And I think that's all determined by what the governor allows us to do, right? Like the suggestion for hybrid meetings, even without the definition, has been on the table formally with him since last spring. Gail mentioned it a couple of times at our meetings. And Gail doesn't stop mentioning things. And he hasn't responded. He hasn't, she's awesome. He hasn't responded yet, and yeah, like that would be very unfortunate for community. There's 59 boards that have to figure this out.
Angel,
and if they just snap their fingers, we're going to be at a disadvantage.
We're not alone. Like sitting in the CEC, we're having these same discussions, other entities. So I think maybe as other city agencies or entities, right, DOE and part of this, really advocate for this. So again, thank you. Thank you.
Sure. One more thing before going to Xavier, CB2 and Z mentioned this earlier. CB2 in Manhattan has had 2 in-person meetings so far. And they were assisted by Beta NYC with some of their technology stuff. I don't know what the bodies were. I think it was executive. I'm not 100% sure. But there are some boards starting to dip their toe. Yeah. Yeah, so
the consortium next week is going live.
Yeah, we've also heard, without naming names, from some board members that have straight up told us, I'm not going. But that's for whenever that comes. Xavier?
Hi, Angel. Thank you, everyone. I think extensive conversations with Adele and clarifying everything, and I agree with you that Gail to no end has been opining that we need to have a model of prevention which would foresee a hybrid rollout. However, as Adele has clarified, that even we should, and again, I'm of the position we should vote to approve these amendments, but as was clarified at May's meeting, is that if the EO, the executive order, is rescinded, we revert back to the open meetings law, and we're forced to find a navigatable path toward in-person meetings to conduct our elections. So this is our stopgap, if you will, and I think that failing the state government and Cuomo or to find a tenable hybrid model we could function, I think these bylaws as amended will serve us well in this instance until such time that either the Assembly and State Senate find a law that would permit us to move forward, or the EO is adapted to allow us to have a hybrid model.
Thanks. Yeah, for sure. Like, and there's been, I think, two got some guidance from the law department in terms of like rules that they can implement for limitations on attendees, rules that they could, like requirements that they could have of attendees and so forth, which is helpful, but also kind of wishy-washy. And then community boards fall into this funny place sometimes. So it gets that much more complicated. I just hope that we don't end up being an afterthought and then trying to figure it out at the last second. Nelson?
Well, I just wanted to echo what everyone is saying, and Xavier, and especially yourself. We cannot not afford to have a plan in place. That plan is that we have to plan that we may have to do this virtually. So the bylaws, the temporary bylaws amendment, to me, as a member, not even speaking as a chair, is a no-brainer because we don't know what's coming down the pike. And I think that we need to think outside the box that if we are coming back in person, what would that look like? And I agree, Angel, that we may need to reach out to, if CB2 has been having had an in-person meeting or two, maybe we can, maybe you can speak to the district manager and just get a sense of how that went. I too have been having board members telling me that even with vaccinations, that they're not comfortable with the relaxing of potentially social distancing, where we have 50 people in a room, and depending on what might be available, because if it's not a really large venue that can space out, it may be really difficult that people may be closer in proximity that they want to. I've also had board members mention the fact that some may wear masks and some may not, and that, you know, there's no 100% foolproof vaccination, and, you know, not everyone is not required to get vaccinated. And so this is a situation that can really impact, at least for the next year, how we will do board business, and maybe permanently structure how the board does things. And so we are a volunteer body. We can't force anyone to attend meetings if they feel that their health is in jeopardy, in addition to staff, right? So it's not only the board, we have staff that we also need to make sure is safeguarded and feels comfortable in the carrying out of their work. And so to me, this temporary bylaws amendment is a crucial step to ensure that at least we have something in place within our bylaws, be it temporarily, to allow us to bridge any gaps in that if we need to vote virtually, we have something down that this board has adopted.
Yeah, agreed. I saw a hand go back down. I had one other thing to say. One would hope that from challenges and from what you do during a challenge, there are lessons that could be learned are learned. We've demonstrated the 59 community boards that we can conduct business effectively remotely. And I think, you know, I can't speak on behalf of all of them, but I've spoken to enough of them to know that they agree, like, you know, why couldn't we still have some features of this in whatever comes, to go back exactly to what we had before and ignore that we've learned to do this effectively and openly, which is the most important thing. Like the in-person thing is getting at doing it in the public sphere, conducting business in public. But if we're conducting it here and we're showing it to everyone, that's public, so long as we're not meeting in private, right? So I think, you know, without going on about it, there's a lesson to be learned there. So long as the board is deliberating and voting, and that deliberation and that voting is, you know, available and, you know, viewable and comment, you know, like there's an opportunity to comment by the public, I think, for whatever that's worth, that it meets the spirit of the open meetings law, which I think was getting at government business should not be happening behind closed doors, right? I have some comments about that, but I won't say them on the record. Beverly Pabon. Beverly, you have to tell me if I'm mispronouncing your last name, but I'm going to keep going, Pabon.
Pabon is correct. Thank you so
right.
very much. Okay, like I'm new to all of this, and I know the importance of the voting, seeing that we have these elections now for mayor and everybody. So my idea was, I'm thinking, would early voting be something that we can probably put in so people can be able to come during certain days to vote? I mean, I don't know if the voting for what we have to do has to be done in one day. And so I want to know if it was able to be spread and where people can do it early or just spread the days. If they say, you know, we have to come back to open meetings, open meeting law, and everything's back to normal and we have to have in-person voting, does it have to be all in one day? And if not, you know, can it be like early voting? I'm just trying to use some of the techniques that they're doing now for voting for mayor and everything to see if that can help us, you know, do the business that we have to do for the community board.
Right, that is one, it's a great idea, but two, no, we can't do it.
Okay.
So So open meeting is a state thing saying we have to meet and allow the public in. But our election process is a CB11 thing. Like those are rules that we created for ourselves as to how we do elections. And the bylaws currently say how the elections are done. That is not to say that CB11 couldn't vote to change its procedure to allow what you're suggesting. And then the only restriction there would be that there is a notice that has to be given a certain amount of time before a vote is cast to amend the bylaws. But that's a cool idea. So as you're talking, I'm thinking like, okay, like we have certain members that have expressed that they have difficulty with with online stuff or whatever, or may simply prefer to submit a paper ballot. The current bylaws require a paper ballot, right? That's what it was changed to. And then you just check off multiple choice, whoever you want for each position. So in theory, not in fact or in law or in bylaw, you could certainly still you could alter the process to allow for paper ballots to still be cast, for example, at the board office in a secure box or something, a certain amount of time in advance, and then also have your electronic thing. The challenge there, maybe, since my job is to create problems, is if you have a runoff, what happens? So then you would have to consider what the automatic runoff is. So the way that our elections are currently set up is you do another vote.
Right.
So unlike the ranked choice voting that automatically just calculates, our process would, as currently contemplated, in the eventuality of a tie, then you, like I was explaining earlier when to your question, you would have to have another ballot. So like if it was 3 candidates, the third would get eliminated and then you go back to the first.
Right. Okay.
But possible as a recommendation to be done, but currently not possible per the bylaws.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Angel, I believe that CB9 is doing their elections tonight. Is that so?
I don't know. I'm not allowed in West Harlem.
Oh, well, I could have sworn that Barry Weinberg said elections were tonight, so I'm not sure if I misunderstood. So
I know
if
they're
that's
doing
the
them
case,
remote.
right? So
Yeah.
it may be worthwhile to follow up and find out if
Sure.
I
I'll
did
give
not misunderstand today.
I'll give you a call.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
That's actually who I copied our thing from.
Yeah. So it would be interesting
from
that
your
if it was today, how did it go? And
Right.
any problems that they might have run
Sure.
into, so that we can then, address them before we do ours.
That's all I got. Oh, somebody sent it. John?
Angel, I have a semi-stupid question.
Never.
This one might be. Well, the thing is that I know that budgets are tight because of the pandemic, and like you said, the community board's budget's been cut the last 2 years. I'm going to put this out here, and I know it may sound silly, but think about it. The thing is that since equipment is needed to stream a meeting, can we make that a budget request from the executive committee?
So two answers. We have equipment that we purchased. Like we have a brand new camera, we have the streaming stuff. It's just that we have one. But the second answer is, can we request? Yes. It's a longer process. But yes, the short answer to that. And as you've heard me in the past and heard other folks that are pro community board in the past argue for increasing community board budgets for a number of reasons. And before the pandemic hit, council, or at least, community boards had certain champions at the council seeking to increase our budgets. We had that 1-year grant thing, but that's gone now. And the biggest champion for community boards, council, in my eyes, Councilmember Fernando Cabrera, who was chairing the Government Operations Committee, he's term limited, so he's out. So we're gonna have to find a new champion. And, in the last year, and, here I go risking my employment, the budget for community boards was cut. And I understand that at the height of the pandemic and, the tax receipts were, way down for the city. And they, the administration wanted to share the pain amongst agencies. The cuts to community boards are really painful. And when you total the amount saved among all the community boards, it's a drop in the bucket in the municipal budget. So, in my opinion, again, for whatever that's worth, it's a shame that they did that. Like, you're talking about $1.5 million in a budget of God knows what. So like around
$95 billion.
Yeah, so like a rounding error in the larger budget is crippling community boards, right? Like, we have, been very responsible with our budget, like almost to extremes. So we're hurt, but we're not crippled. We're just limited. There's other boards that are stuck, like they're paying their nut from last year's cuts, 4 or 5 years out. It's like really bad. And that, is going to impact their ability to hire, to keep staff, and to operate their offices. And that's a real problem, because community boards do really important work for the communities that they represent.
And you're right, and that shouldn't be, because the thing is, you can't have us do the city's work and tie a hand behind our back in the process.
Yeah, there is, in researching this a couple of years ago, the whole like streaming, professional camera crew, all that stuff, I got in contact with a couple of the boards in the Bronx that had gotten grants directly from their council members to do it, and got contact information for a couple of companies that just kind of created out of thin air, that to do just this. So if we were to have the money to pay them, there are entities that exist, right? So like it could be, I don't know, I forgot what the number was. It wasn't completely out of the realm of possibility. It's just we wouldn't have it right now. But if we got a grant from the blah 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 foundation for $10,000 or $20,000, then we can certainly do it. We just got to reach out to blah blah blah.
Okay, thanks, Angel.
Thank you for your question, John.
There any other questions for Angel Muscane? Okay, Angel, I see none. Thank you so much. I have some ideas, but I'm not going to take up the meeting with them, so I'll speak with you offline regarding this.
Cool.
And so we're moving on to old business. If there is any old business that any member wants to bring up, please raise your hand. Jose Altamirano.
Hi.
Hi.
So we had a question from our committee. We were doing a survey that we've been working on, and I know that currently District Needs is also doing a survey. So our question was, we don't have a problem waiting, so it doesn't interfere with the survey from District Needs. We were curious about what we thought. Unfortunately, Jason's not here, but the rest of you here. So we were curious about your opinion in that matter. If we're not in a rush for it, we can wait, but if it doesn't interfere, then we'll start as well.
So my question to you is, how does your survey differ from the district needs and budget? Like, you're right, your public safety, right? So public safety may have
public safety and transportation oriented.
Right, right. So your survey may be oriented in that direction. But district needs and budget, it's an all encompassing kind of thing. So I would be interested to see what your survey would be, right? And see if those questions somehow are within the district needs and budget survey or vice versa. Nothing cancels out either one, right? It's just making sure that you market the surveys to the community in such a way that you get the answers that you're looking for. So I don't think one cancels out another, But if you have a timeline, depending on what's going on now that you want your survey to inform, then that would inform your timeline. So for instance, if the community thinks there's a lot of e-bikes, too many e-bikes, too many motorcycles, and there's been a concern, a particular concern around that, you may want to do a survey, you might want to do a town hall. So I'm just curious as to how does the district need survey, other than there's two surveys that may start out at the same time, how does the district needs survey impact the public safety and transportation survey?
It doesn't.
Okay.
We don't have a timeline, while the
Okay.
district, they do have a timeline. So we kind of didn't want to, we didn't want to wait, we didn't want to step on anyone's toes. Like, we could easily wait for the fall. And I know that the district needs has to be done now. So, we don't want to take any, we don't want to take any attention away from that. That's all. Because we
Okay,
like to
I'm just,
keep it here.
well, I'm gonna do a follow-up and then I'll open it up for other comments. I don't think anything that gets information from the community takes away attention from anything, because your information may be more targeted based on the work that your committee is doing. So nothing precludes you from continuing your work and putting together a draft. And when it's right, when you feel it's right, then you bring it up. It may be that the district needs and budget survey may have a particular section on public safety and transportation that could answer your questions. And so your survey the possibility could be that it can be incorporated, if that makes any sense. So just thinking off the top of my head. So those are my comments. I'm going to open it up and see. Marissa, you have a comment, question?
Yes, two things really quickly. One, I just wanted to make an announcement on behalf of Eva. So Year Up, and I think David is aware of this as well, but I think Year Up is looking to partner with Mateen, a representative from NYCHA, on.
Wait, Marissa, wait, hold on. Before you go into that announcement, Jose was talking about getting a viewpoint about the public safety and transportation.
I'm sorry.
No, and I thought that's why you had your question raised. I'll get back to you.
Sorry, okay, bye, sorry.
Okay.
She's trying to dismiss me.
In terms of what Jose has mentioned, does this committee have a viewpoint or can give him a sense of what your thoughts are in terms of two different surveys, potential timing, topic, or anything like that? Jessica Elliott?
Sorry, my cat was trying to walk across the screen. I just wanted to bring up that I think both surveys are valuable. I think we could potentially have a lack of participation in one or both of them if we release them at the same time. So I don't know if there's no rush on the public safety survey. If we could offset them in some way, that I think that would be best.
Yeah, that's our thought. We just wanted to confirm with everyone.
Okay. Any other thoughts from this committee on Jose's? He's looking for confirmation or nay on their thoughts about whether to release a survey at the same time or they should hold off. Ms. Pabon?
My question is, I don't know are any of these surveys online already? Like I said, I'm new to this, so I would like to know what those surveys look like.
No, Ms. Pabon, they're not. They're in process. And so the Public Safety and Transportation Committee is working or would like to work on a survey to based on the committee work and the questions. The district need and budget would look to do a survey as outlined by Carly Wine earlier this evening in her presentation. Okay. And there will be two distinct surveys. that when are done and vetted and approved would then be released for informational purposes, for informational gathering. So at this time, there are no surveys.
Okay, thank you very much.
We,
Madam.
we have a beta that we'll send to Ms. Pavone so she can look, because we send it to the entire full board as a kind of preliminary so people can kind of look at it. And we'll start testing everyone pretty soon on that because Nilsa did say that participation is key, right, Nilsa?
Yeah,
Participation is always key. And based on when you release it, give us enough time since you said that time was not of the essence. Are there any other questions or comments on what Jose brought up?
No.
Good, okay, Angel. And so Marissa, now the floor is yours so you can say your announcement from Eva Chan.
Sorry, Jose. Yeah, so I'm partnering with Eva, and I know she is working with, I believe, Youth and Education, as well as Mateen, a representative from NYCHA, on reviewing some of the applications that are being sent to Year Up. So I know that there are a few more details with that, but Year Up is a nonprofit organization. They do a lot of work with partnering youth and mentoring them in terms of jobs and job readiness, interviewing skills, all of that's good stuff. So if you are someone who would like to help and review some of the applications, I believe last year 20 students from NYCHA in our area applied. None of them got into the program. So the idea this year is to try to see how we can assist with that, whether it's helping through interview skills, whether it's reviewing applications or what have you. She has a bit more information, but I did want to at least put that out there. If anyone is interested in assisting in any of those ways to help students from our area at least apply and attempt to get into the program, please feel free to email me or Eva Chan. Second,
I have a
You know-
question.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And okay, so I've done mentoring in the past for the Europe and Europe programs and summer youth and that. So my question is, in terms of the pandemic, has that, and I know that you may not be able to answer this question. How is it that potential mentors and mentees or even doing the interviewing skills, is that something that you think is going to be done through Zoom or in small groups? Or
my understanding is Zoom, and again, just so that people, and not to say that they're scared, but just so people understand, I think this is more of just a reviewing of their applications. It's not a long-term commitment, right? So when you think about like mentoring, I don't think this is taking on someone as a mentee per se, but it's helping with them reviewing their process to get into the program. So it's something short term. So, as people think about like their time and what they're doing, it's nothing where you have to commit, for so long. But I think if you're able to at least give some of your time, that might be helpful. So again, Eva has more information. She's kind of really steering this, but I did agree to mention that.
Yeah, I'll just add, Marissa,
Yeah.
some of the things that are most important with young people is follow through. And so it's like a short term kind of almost mentoring, but a lot of it is also writing the essays. Kids need help writing the essays. And unfortunately, that takes time. So I think that's a big piece of it. So it's not only just reviewing applications for the process, but reviewing to help that child get in. So it would be helping them possibly write the essay or correcting an essay so it can be submitted. These are some of the things that we often find as we go through this. And Eva's really been doing a wonderful job actually with two other youth members, Angela and Patricia, as they set up the Harlem Resources as a way of making sure people have information about what's out there and a whole different level of things. But Eva has a few different opportunities for our youth. And too often we lose the opportunity because that young person doesn't have somebody to follow through with them to ensure it gets done, the process. Thank you, Marissa, for bringing it up.
And then just one more quick announcement. And again, you can also reach out to me. Yesterday during economic development, we talked about the Second Avenue subway that's coming. But obviously there was also discussion at public safety about the viaduct and what that's going to mean, not only for transportation, but then also for businesses as well. Angel and Giselle did a great job kind of rounding off the meeting yesterday, but something that came out of the meeting was going around to some of the areas and some of the businesses to try to just at least see what's going on, see who's out there, see who's going to be impacted. And I think there may be a group of people going out Monday evening, possibly around the viaduct area, just to, to see what businesses are out there, to kind of do some preliminary just talking, but just wanted to offer that up to other board members. Again, you can email me, and I know Angel's busy, but you can also CC him as well, and Giselle, who's been very hands-on with this as well. And there will be obviously more conversations around both the Second Avenue subway and the viaduct and how it's going to impact the community, but just wanted to put that out there as well, if there's anyone that wants to come out with a group of people to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. Is there any questions for Marissa's announcements? No, I see none. Okay, so that's it for that's what's part of old business. And I guess Marissa was new business. And so if there's no more new business, Angel, I'd like to call a roll call vote.
Jose Altamirano,
Present.
Jessica Elliott,
Present.
Marissa Mack,
Present.
Judith Fabraro,
Present.
David Giordano,
Present.
Nosa Arama,
Present.
Xavier Santiago,
Present.
Nye Whitaker, John Green.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. If there are no objections, I am going to adjourn the meeting as of 9:09 p.m. Thank you